There's a lot of people out there that think like, well, I'm just going to try harder. I'm going to try and make this work, and I'm going to try a lot harder. I think we have to try differently. We have to try the different, and different is scary. Change is scary, but that's where we grow. And that's how we get to continue to do what we do and grow food and have these communities that are thriving. We have to try things differently. And I'm here for the people who want to try it and do a little different.
Hi, friend. Welcome to Gather and Growth, a show created for passionate, growth-focused rural women like you. From mindset work and building strong habits to exploring the unique joys and challenges of living rural, this is a show to leave you feeling joyful, inspired, and a little less alone. Together, we're on a journey of reaching for the most confident, healthy, and authentic version of ourselves, and I'm forever grateful to have you by my side. Whether you're currently running on a back road, shuffling kids to town, hopping along for a tractor ride, or 3 loads deep into folding laundry, grab yourself a nice coffee and let's dive in. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Gather and Growth. Today, I am so excited to be joined by my friend Katelyn. I recently had the opportunity to be on her podcast, so getting to sit in the other chair this time is always so fun. I loved our conversation there, and I just cannot wait for the absolute fire she's going to bring our way today. So welcome, friend.
Thank you so much. I am equally as excited, but I have to tell you, when I have to sit in the other chair, I get a little nervous.
Really?
Yeah, I still do, and I don't know why.
See, I think it's easier being the guest because, I don't know. I think maybe I just talk on the fly easier, and I don't have to think so hard to prepare.
Could be. Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe I just really like being the boss. So.
Well, if you want to turn this into a reverse podcast episode, just let me know. But you can throw out whatever questions you want as well.
Don't tempt me, or we will be here all day.
Anyway, for anyone who's just getting to know you, can you give us a little context of who you are, what you do, and what got you to today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Katelyn Duban. I am a first-generation farmer in southern Alberta, Canada. If you pick up on the accent, I am a first-generation farmer, and I was not born and raised on a farm. I was not brought up in family farming, but I did, however, meet a very charming man who was a farmer and fell madly in love with him and found myself on a multi-generational grain operation in southern Alberta. So we became certified organic in 2018. We were not always organic over here, but this is, something we wanted to do and wanted to create more work for ourselves. So I've been here on the farm for about 6 years. My farming duties have changed throughout the years. And to be honest, when I started here, it was not my intention to be an active member on the farm. I had a career. I wore the fancy shoes. I had the parking spot. I had a salary. I had a pension, all of the things. I was the total package. So when I came to this farm, it was basically like a duck out of water. And I went through some pretty severe growing pains. I would say the first at least year out here, specifically within the first 6 months, and really trying to figure out what on earth I was supposed to be doing. And if any of you follow my good friend Brene Brown, she refers to this as a mental breakdown / spiritual awakening. And I feel like I truly experienced that within my first 6 to 9 months here on the farm, which I've, been open about online and everywhere. And whether that's a cringy story for you or not to hear, it's what happened. So yeah, I started here not knowing what I was going to be doing. And by the fall of my first year on the farm, I had learned to operate equipment. I had learned to run a swather. I was in the field harvesting the grain that I watched them plant, and I was hooked. So I ended up leaving my career, and again, still not knowing what that would look like for me. I never intended on being a full-time farmer. I always thought I would go back to work in some capacity. And it just so happens that I've made my own work now. So I
As you
started,
do.
yeah, as you do, right? I started sharing my own personal story on social media very soon after we got married as a new farm wife, because I honestly had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. So I remember sitting on my lunch break at my job before we got married, and I Googled, what do women on farms do? What do farm wives do? And I was amazed. The Google told me, and the Google connected me with other women who had started sharing their story. And, I'd always been creative and I've always loved writing, and I've always kind of done that as a personal hobby of mine. And so I thought, well, maybe I can start this. So I had started my Instagram profile way back when we first got married, and just kind of started sharing a little bits and pieces about the farm and what we were doing, and what I was learning and what I was discovering. And I think the biggest thing I discovered through all of that was the community of incredible women who were doing this thing that I was so enamored by. They were growing food and they were growing babies and they were just living this lifestyle that I had no idea existed, all while, doing all of the other things that other people do. It was just like amazing to me. So I started sharing more and more on Instagram and had been connected with some amazing women. And it was the summer of 2018 when I was out in one of our fields. I was mowing our cover crop. And if you could tell by the lines out there, I was not fully paying attention to what I was doing. There was no GPS in that tractor at the time. And I would watch Instagram stories. And this is kind of when Instagram stories, I think, were just starting, and people were sharing like the bits and pieces of their day-to-day lives, and, through our feeds and everything. I just was so inspired by what these women were doing. But there was a common theme that I found amongst these women, and that was they didn't really see the big deal in their stories. And they just shared them as matter of fact, very humbly, like, this is what we do. This is how we do it. This is why we do it. And I just thought, like, why isn't this being shared wider? Like, why isn't this being celebrated? Because to me, it was a big deal. Maybe to them, it wasn't. But I love, love, love podcasts, and I always have. And listening to podcasts on the tractor was my jam. But I have to tell you, when I looked to see what agriculture podcasts would interest me at that time, there wasn't many. I love people and their passions in agriculture, and whether that's, agronomy or the markets or any of these things. It's not my jam. I have to be honest. So when I looked for basically a storytelling podcast or story sharing podcast, there wasn't any. So that day I got off the tractor and I went running into the house up to my lovely husband. And I told him that I had the greatest idea, that I was going to start a podcast for women specifically in agriculture to have a platform to share and celebrate their stories. And that lovely man looked right at me and said, honey, that sounds like a lot of work. And,
Not wrong.
I don't give him a lot of credit for being right all the time, but I did give him credit for that. So I jumped on the Google. I went to the University of Google to figure out how the heck you start a podcast. And in March of 2019, I launched my podcast, the Rural Woman Podcast. And it started out, I interviewed a dozen or so women of their stories and, fumbled my way through the editing, the publishing, the marketing, all of the things. And I thought, if my mom listens to this, like, that's good. Like, I'll be happy with that. But it turned out that not only did I need to hear this podcast through my earbuds, but other women and other people needed to hear this podcast too. So The rest is history. It shot off like wildfire, and this coming March, it will be our 4th anniversary. We have, far surpassed the 500,000 download mark now. We've been heard worldwide. I have had the privilege of hearing some incredible stories and connecting with some incredible people. And I think more importantly, this platform has shown that women in agriculture and rural women have stories to share and that they are worthy of being shared. And that's my story. That's me in a nutshell.
Gosh, I don't know that I knew all of that. So I think my follow-up question, you mentioned this transition from fancy career you always thought you would be to moving to the farm and then going through this like breakdown / awakening. So first of all, I would love for you to talk more about that because gosh, how relatable is that? How many of us have moved back to the farm and gone through our own like crisis of redefining who we are? And then using that as a springboard to find what your place looks like in this world that you didn't know, but now are really in the thick of in your own way. I would love it more if you could speak to what that journey has been like.
Yeah. So back when I had my career, it was something that I held a lot of pride in. I come from a family of very hardworking, dedicated people. And when we get a job, we stick to it and we do it to the best of our ability and we go all in. And when I got this job, this career, this was something that, your parents always dreamed of, your children to be able to buy a home, to have a pension, like to do all of these things. And when I got here and I arrived at this new life that was in front of me, I fought tooth and nail to keep my old life just the same as it was. I wanted to be that career woman that I was proud of and that other people were proud of, and just dabble, I guess, in this farming lifestyle. Because at the time, it was just like, well, I would come out here and go for romantic combine rides and at harvest and then get to go back to my house and, life was normal. And I quickly realized that in order for me to be successful here, I had to let go of the pride and the ego around what it was to be a successful woman. And, I say that with the utmost respect for the women who have chosen the path of, I am going to work off of this farm and support in other ways, because I commend them for that, because that is I just have so much respect for the women who are able to wear that additional hat. At the time, the changes were hard. Like I said, I was holding on to who I thought I was and who maybe I wanted to be. And I was stuck in the middle and it was so confusing. At the time, there were many changes in my job and my career that didn't align with me. And I was at my breaking point. And, when you go through these major changes, and I don't know if anybody tells you this, nobody told me this. So if you're listening to this and you don't know, listen up. When people talk about the first year of your marriage being the happiest and it's the honeymoon phase and all of those things, you hear all of the wonderful Hallmark romances about that. I didn't live that. And if you're hearing this and you didn't live it either, please know you're not alone. And if you do live it, I'm so happy for you, because that is all I ever wanted. I wanted to move out here, have the romantic combine rides, all of the things, and it just didn't happen that way. So in the spring, in the summer, I took a leave of absence from my job, and it was purely for my own mental health. And to be honest, I sat in the dark under the covers and cried my way through all of it. The only places I went was my therapist and my doctor's office, and had to work through the stigma in my own mind of my own mental health and feeling that failure, that I couldn't just be, quote, normal, that I had to buy my serotonin through the pharmacy. All of these things. I had to work through all of those things. And eventually, slowly the curtains opened. I poked my head out to see what was going on around the farm. And I started taking more of an interest of what was happening around here and what was my new life. And eventually, like I said, I started on the lawnmower. And I honestly thought that I was going to be one of those statistics of lawnmower deaths that happen, because I was terrified of driving this lawnmower. And so once I mastered that, I started to venture out and do other things. And it was a learning experience. It was something that I never thought I would do. And it's funny to me because when I think of the work that I used to do, and the spreadsheets and the statistics and all of the like monitoring of these things, like at the end you got to see what your results were, and that was rewarding to me. And now here I am on a grain farm driving the swather, and at the start of the day all of this wheat was standing up, and at the end of the day all of the wheat was laying down. So to visually see that did something to my brain that was like, this is sexy. I like doing this. Like, how can I do more? And I became more curious and interested in it. So knowing that feeling that I got, I was like, oh, I like this. And I like this industry. If you've grown up in agriculture and you've been around farmers your entire life, you might not realize this, but coming from outside in, farmers and ranchers and folks in agriculture are probably some of the greatest people. And I know you kind of sound like an airhead when you say that, or egomaniac when you say that coming from a farmer. But honestly, like, the people in this industry make the industry what it is. And I think going into agriculture, not exactly knowing where my place was going to be, that was a really scary thing for me. And some days it still is. Some days I sit here and think, well, what is my place? Why am I doing this? But knowing that we get to choose how we show up in agriculture, and we get to choose our roles, and we get to define who we are in this industry, I think is super important, and a note that I want people to hear. There have been arguments online, probably at your community halls or whichever. People are put in categories and are given roles and titles that maybe they want or maybe they don't want. For instance, I don't call myself a farm wife, and there are women who do, and I love that for them. I choose to not call myself a farm wife. I am a farmer. What that means to me is for me alone. I get to define that, just as anyone else can call themselves what they want, because that's for them. I am a voice in agriculture, whether you like it or not. That's what I've chosen to do. That is my role in agriculture. If the farm was gone tomorrow, am I still a farmer? Those are questions that I ask myself. And to be honest, I don't know the answer to what those are. But what I do know is the passion that I have for this industry will never go away. And I continue to be a voice of agriculture because we need the diverse voices. We need the voices in this industry that choose to challenge it, that choose to embrace it for all that it is, the good, bad, and otherwise. So that is a very long answer to your follow-up question, but I have slowly grown into what my role is. But my role is forever changing. And I think that's what I like the most about it. And being an entrepreneur, we get to pivot, we get to move, we get to jump, we get to do things differently. And that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it a little scary sometimes. But that's what keeps me going, is that drive, is the forever changing landscape of agriculture specifically, but also entrepreneurship. Like, there's new things every day. There's things that I don't know. There'll be things that I never know, but I'm always interested and curious about learning about it. So
I think the way you described your story is so parallel to agriculture in so many ways in general, in that what it looks like to figure out who you were and what you thought you were always going to be and what your life was going to look like. And that jarring realization that whether it was intentional or not, things were changing, and how hard that can be to let go of and make space for growth and to evolve, and the fear and uncertainty with the unknown. And I think, if we're talking about agriculture as an industry right now, like so many people are on a similar path of, why are we doing what we're doing? Like, what role does it play in the future of our operation? Like making those micro decisions of defining who you are and what's important to you, or how this looks on different fields, or what to try next. Like, I think that really does hold up a mirror for what the industry is doing, of figuring out how to evolve and change into this ever growing society. And so I love that you then ended with speaking in what it looks like to celebrate and embrace diversity in agriculture in rural communities. Because I know that's something that you are so passionate about. That's something that I care so much about. And I think a lot of times we are the most at war with ourselves, like within ag or within rural communities. Hey friend, after bringing dozens of small town doers and dreamers together in 2022, I am so excited to announce I'm getting ready to relaunch small group virtual masterminds to help you bring your life, career, or business to the next level. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, entrepreneur, leader in your organization, or thriving business owner, I'm putting together unique offers specifically designed to meet you where you're at and help you grow. Tap the link in today's show notes to be the first to learn about each mastermind offering, and of course, first to register come launch day. So, you have, over the past 4 years, which is amazing, congratulations, had so many interviews and perspectives with these women in rural communities in agriculture, and you've seen and heard so many diverse stories. So I would love if you could share what your thoughts are on what it means to celebrate, embrace, and support that.
Yeah. I always kind of make the joke when I am at a conference or speaking to people or on a podcast to like not heckle me or boo me or anything when I tell them that I come from a certified organic farm, because they're like, oh God, the hippie is here. And I just kind of laugh. But that's just one way of being diverse, of, how you grow your crops and all of the things. And I know when I started the podcast, it was a question that came out a lot. Like, are you only going to interview a certain type of farm or farmer or rancher or anything? I said, honestly, I have one stipulation for the Rural Woman podcast. And the stipulation is, they identify as a woman or non-binary. That's the only stipulation I have. Anything else, fair game. Let's talk about it, because I'm curious and I want to learn. Something that I learned really early on in agriculture is there is no one way of doing anything, and there is no right way of doing anything. What we're doing here on this farm is completely different than Buddy next door is doing. Bad, good, or otherwise, it's just different. And so that's something that I've always found interesting with agriculture. In other industries, there is the right way of doing things, and this is how you have to do it. With agriculture, it's kind of a fluid thing, and it's learning and it's doing things differently. So what I've learned from the 170 some odd interviews that I've done is nobody's going to do it the same, but we can pull inspiration from what others are doing and make those micro changes in our own operation. Or for the women who have come on and been so brave to tell us what hasn't worked for them and what they've learned from that. Those are the stories that I really appreciate, because there's so many of us out here. And, to hear that I've been doing this for 4 years, there's 500,000 downloads, all of those things, those sound really wonderful and lovely. There's been a lot of failure along the way to make that happen. And in that failure, there's growth. So if you're not willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there with the potential to fail, you will never grow. And I hate that is a fact, because Emily, I really hate falling on my face. Takes me a while to get back up, but I do. And, It's been a learning experience. And I think for a lot of the women that I've interviewed, it's been a learning experience for them on their operation. And whether that's learning a new technique or incorporating new livestock or trying different amenities for their soil, whatever it is, like I have so much respect for people who are willing to try. And you know what? If you don't succeed, that's okay. You try again, you try something different. And, something that I'd heard recently that really was just like a light bulb moment for me. There is a lot of people out there that think like, well, I'm just going to try harder. I'm going to try and make this work and I'm going to try a lot harder. I think we have to try differently.
Yeah.
We have to try the different, and different is scary. Change is scary, but that's where we grow. And that's how we get to continue to do what we do and grow food and have these communities that are thriving. We have to try things differently. And I'm here for the people who want to try it and do a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a front row seat that I have gotten, being married to my husband. My husband, I will give him so much credit. He is so passionate. And for the entirety of the time that we've been on the farm, which I guess we're coming up on 6 years now, also has been experimenting. And what if we try this cover crop? What if we just throw out a bunch of this kind of stuff? What if we try no-till? What if we try strip-till? What if we try, I can't even make a list of the things that he's tried. And it's different and it's out there. And, the conversations that he will have with people being like, well, I tried it and he didn't work. And he's like, okay, well, your soil's different. Like, what about this? Have you considered this? What about making this little change? And I've just gotten to really watch him evolve and watch him do some things really, really successfully. And, for your phrase, like fall way flat on his face, and like what that does to your pride, ego, like self-worth, all of that. And just watching his journey and the way that he so openly shares about it. Like he was asked to speak at a conference and basically gave a presentation about everything that he had done that hadn't worked. And the grown men who were weeping by the end that said, this is the first time I have gone to something like this and someone has admitted all of the ways that something hasn't worked. Like I thought it was just me. And whether in agriculture or entrepreneurship, like, why don't we talk about that? It's easy to be like, oh, here's all these things that went wrong and here's how I overcame and here's what I learned. And it's so great. But like, I want to hear about it along the way. I want to hear what you're struggling with like right now so that I don't feel like the only person who feels like this is so dang hard and who's, like you said, willing to stand back up and try again and reiterate and not just keep pushing the same thing if it doesn't seem like it's a good fit anymore. But what does it mean to evolve? What does it mean to grow as a person, professionally, on the farm, all the things?
Right. I think the whole thing about being vulnerable and telling people what didn't work and how it failed. And like, kudos to him for doing that. Because let me tell you, I've sat in a few conferences where they're up there and they're telling you how wonderful it is and all of the things. And like you said, like what happened along the way? Mm-hmm. And I get, we want the comeback story. The comeback story is the one that hits you right in the feelers. But I want to be in the arena. I want to be down there seeing what's not working and why it's not working and how do we build each other up. And like you said, the feeling of I thought it was just me has to be one of the loneliest, worst feelings you can have as a human. And, I've shared my story. I've shared my struggle of mental health and I've shared my successes from it and I've shared what's worked for me. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you, but it also means like, this might be something for you to try. This might be something for you to take a piece from and give it a go for yourself. And if it doesn't work for you, okay, what's the next thing that you can do?
Yeah, at least opens the door to show like there's a path.
Yes.
And I think more than anything, gosh, if there's one message that I could just bestow upon the world, it's like, what do you actually want? Like, what makes sense for you and or your career or your family or your operation? Like, stop trying to copy and paste someone else's journey or process into your own life. Like, of course, by all means, like take inspiration, try different things, but it's okay to trust yourself to figure out what makes sense for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So doing what you do or what you have grown into, what you're doing at this point, it comes with an element of bravery, of standing up and doing something different, maybe in agriculture in a small town, which is where I know a lot of the women who really dig this podcast are at. They are, they have a goal on their heart. They're working towards a dream. They're maybe stepping outside of what they've ever done before, what anyone in their family has done before, what anyone else around them feels like they're doing. Like, in your journey, what have been some of the hardest parts of being a person who's standing up and doing something different?
I think some of the hardest parts have been, the parts where you do fall on your face, where you have tried something and then it doesn't work out. And when you're in that really low place, deciding if you're going to stand back up or not. And, it takes a lot of courage to do something new. And I think one of the biggest learning pieces that I've had over the years is having the courage to stand back up and do it again will lead you to the confidence to keep going, to be able to continue to have those moments where you do fall again, because we're all going to do it. I don't care if you've been in the business for 50 years, there's still going to be flubs along the way. And having the courage to stand up and do it again builds that confidence piece. And it's the confidence piece that will keep you going. And I still struggle a lot of times with, am I the person that should be doing this? But then I think to myself, well, why not me? Why not me? What is the reason I shouldn't be doing this? And to be honest, the hardest conversations I've ever had are with myself. The hardest person who has ever been mean to me lives up here in my brain. And one thing I always joke and laugh and say, I'm pretty sure I've bought my counselor, my therapist, a boat by now because, she keeps me going. One question she's always posed to me whenever I'm in doubt, whenever I'm in my head and being that mean girl to myself, to stop and ask the question, well, who said that? Did they actually verbally say that to you? Because if they didn't, then that's anxiety talking. And that anxiety doesn't get to control you. Stop and have that conversation with yourself. When you're in the doubt phase of like, who am I to do this? Why am I doing this? Nobody's going to like this. Well, who said that? Like, did you actually go up to your sister-in-law and say, I have this dream, I have this idea, and she just looked at you and you're like, well, that sounds stupid. Likely not. And if she did, we can have a cup of coffee. But that's
a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation for another time. But honestly, like it seems so simple, but it's so hard. It's so simple. You just have to try. And when you try and it works out, try something else. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something different. See what else works. And you know what? It's okay to start something and for it not to be a booming success. Gosh, the amount of things I've tried in the last 6 years that like I thought this is going to be my thing. And you know what? Turns out I didn't like it. And you know what? I didn't have to do it anymore because nobody was there except for me to tell me to do it or to be hard on myself or anything. It's okay to let the things go that didn't work out. And if something didn't work out in the past for you and you've learned from it and you've grown from it, it's going to be a really good launching point for your next thing that you want to try. Because there's nobody here telling you that you can't try. Besides maybe that little mean girl voice in the back of your head. And we don't listen to her. We don't want to talk to her.
That's why we have therapists.
That's why we have therapists. Thank God.
Amen to that. And I just love that piece of everything that you do is a part of what's getting you where you're meant to be. I'll have people be like, oh, do you regret going into education? Do you wish you would have studied business? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, there was no way that 19-year-old me was going to be ready to build a business. I didn't even know what I was doing in the world. Everything that you spend your time and energy on is guiding you along your journey. And one of my good friends always says, like, what's meant for you won't miss you. So you keep standing up, you keep reiterating, you try something new, you carry along your path, and you find your way. So as you're in podcasting and speaking, I would love to know, as we're in January of this year, what is on your heart coming up in 2023?
I have to tell you that, I see the overwhelming excitement of people and like new year, new me, all of that jazz that goes on at the beginning of every year. And I have to tell you that I am typically the complete polar opposite of that.
Mm.
I look at my past year and I think, wow, wow, wow. Like, how can it get better than this? Like 2022 was like my year. Emily, I was in a hair commercial in 2022. Like, how do you start 2023 knowing that you were in a hair commercial in 2022? I don't know. And those were the mean girl thoughts that I had in the beginning of 2023. It's like, oh man, like, what's going to happen this year? Like, what is on the docket? All of those things. But I feel like I've slowly been crawling out of that new year angst.
Mm-hmm.
And 2023 for me, people pick their power word or they pick the word or their New Year's resolutions, whatever it is. For me this year, I've decided that my word for 2023 is audacity.
I love it.
And what that means to me is I am going to choose to show up as my best self. And my best self is audacious. And I am going to ask for the things that I want. I am going to get the things that I need. And I am going to have the most wonderful year of 2023. What that looks like exactly, I still can't tell you because I don't know. But it's a year that I am not going to give up on myself and the dreams and the things that I've built for anything and for anyone. So I think, I have had the privilege of working with some amazing conferences and organizations that have had me come up on their stage and share my story. And I've, next week I leave on the road for basically the next 2 months, getting to share and connect with farmers across Canada. And I'm so excited to give out all of the hugs and see these people face to face and hear about their operations and what they're doing and how we can support one another in doing that and building a better, stronger community in agriculture and what that looks like. So yeah, audacity is the word. I've often been dumbfounded by some audacity that other people have. So if I could just have a small inkling of that, I think I could do some pretty good things. So
yeah. Well, I think that also comes back to weighing the validity of the mean girl.
Right.
It's like if self-doubt, I think when I talk to women in this community, so many things can be boiled down to the belief that we have in ourselves to bring anything to life. And so if we can dial that down and turn up that audacity, and I think oftentimes even just see ourselves the way that our loved ones see us,
right,
and fully step into our purpose and whatever that looks like, what a gift that would be at the end of this year.
Right. Check back with me in 2024 and see if I have accomplished the audacious year that I have set out to do.
But I love that leaves it open. That's not a specific, that's a state of being.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you're in the moment of self-doubt or when you're in the moment of decision-making or you're deciding whether to send the email. Like, am I doing this from a place of fear or audacity?
Right. And honestly, for those who, sit there and think like, oh gosh, should I send the email? Should I do this? Should I reach out? Let me tell you, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is either they're going to say no or they're not going to respond. And you know what? I think it's their loss. And for those emails that you do send out, even if you've been in the industry or doing these things forever, there's still people that get told no, and if no is the worst thing that you're going to be told in the day, well, I think we have a pretty privileged life, right?
Yeah.
Like not getting a response or saying no to things. And I want to flip that too. You don't have to say yes to everything. When you're starting out, you are going to be flattered by the amount of people and brands that want to work with you. And they are going to offer you all of the free goods that you could even imagine, as long as you do 75 reels for them and, dance on a TikTok and whatever it is, right? You don't have to say yes to that. If it doesn't feel good to you and you just can't figure out why, it's a no, right? Like, what's the saying? Like, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no.
Yeah.
And everybody has to do things to grow. But you have to know at the end of the day that this is aligning with who you want to become. And if it's not, please don't do it. Just don't.
Amen. Mic drop there. Like, think, who are you growing into? And if it aligns with that, great. And if not, is it worth your time?
Our time as farmers, as entrepreneurs, as human beings, our time is the most valuable asset that we have. And you need to choose who is taking your energy, who is getting that time, and are they that important? I worked with a woman in my previous career, and I will never forget what she told me. What do you want your headstone to say? Do you want it to say that you were a great, influencer on Instagram, or you were the best podcaster of all time? No, I want it to say that I was a loving wife, a caring friend, a beloved daughter. I want all of those things. And if I'm giving all of my best self to these things that at the end of the day don't really matter that much, then I'm not living my purpose.
Yeah. Wow. Well, on that note, my friend, what does personal growth mean to you? It's a question I ask every guest who comes on the show, and I love the diversity of answers.
I think personal growth for me comes back down to the reflection part, and being self-aware. How are we regulating ourselves and our emotions? How do these things make me feel? And actually slowing down and understanding that and knowing that before we leap into things. Because like I said, it's really sexy to get offers and partnerships and all of these things, but take a step back and reflect on those things. And in the end, is it going to help you become the person that you want to be? And through the process, are you growing? And if you are, then I think that's personal growth, right? And it doesn't need to be about business. It doesn't need to be about work. Is there something that is on your heart that you want to try? Why do you want to try that? What is it going to do for your life? How is it going to make you feel? So being really connected on the inside, to me, that's personal growth.
Love it so much. I know you've mentioned the podcast a few times. So if someone's listening and has recognized just how much they need to listen to your calm, soothing voice and brilliant words, where can they find that and where can they connect with you online?
Thank you. I appreciate that. They can find the Rural Woman podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. My website is wildrosefarmer.com, and you can find everything you need to know there about the podcast and speaking and all of the good stuff. I am known on the internet as Wild Rose Farmer, so I am on all of the social media platforms that you can think of. I don't do any TikTok dances because, I'm not that great at them. But yeah, if you want to connect with me, Wild Rose Farmer, and if you want to connect with the podcast, the Rural Woman podcast, I would love to hear from you and hear your story.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Have I told you today how much I appreciate you? I'd like to imagine this was a meaningful backyard patio kind of chat between friends sipping LaCroix at sunset. If you enjoyed today's show, please take a screenshot to share or forward this episode to a friend. You can also find me at Emily Rushell over on social to continue the conversation. It's truly a joy to hear what tidbits and takeaways made an impact on your day. As always, all links and resources mentioned in today's episode can be found in the show notes listed below or over at emilyrushell.com. Special thanks to my podcast manager, Jill Carr, for the time and love she puts into producing Gather and Growth for this community. What a blessing it is to be on this personal growth journey together. Forever grateful for you.